Hey folks, welcome. Here we discuss real stories by real people. Today we have the story of a man who finds out his girlfriend has been cheating on him with a guy she met online. Let's see how it goes. Story 1. So I, 22 male, have been dating my girlfriend 21 for almost a year now. A good friend of mine worked with her and she ended up coming to his annual Halloween party. I'm not much of a Halloween or costume kind of guy. While most of the people at the party were dressed up in costume, I had just thrown on my standard Halloween costume that I wore every year. A t-shirt with the phrase, "This is my costume," printed across the chest. I was having some drinks and hanging out with my friends when I spotted her in the crowd. She stood out amongst the rest of the group because she wasn't dressed up either. In fact, she was wearing an identical shirt to my own. Our eyes met and we just started cracking up. We hit it off immediately and spent the rest of the night getting to know each other and made plans for dinner the very next day. We got serious pretty fast. She was new to the city and didn't know many people yet. But she was quickly accepted into my friend group and soon enough we were all practically inseparable. If we weren't spending time with just each other, we were out as a group. Everything seemed to be going great. We had a good time together and she seemed like the perfect girlfriend. I was even starting to think about asking her to move in with me. She practically did already, only going to her apartment on the rare nights that she didn't just end up staying over at my place. But then things started to change. She stopped staying over with me as much and was spending more nights at her own apartment. When I questioned her on it, she came up with a million different excuses, none of them making much sense. She kept going out with us all as a group, but seemed to be avoiding spending much time alone with me. Many times, I would make a plan for just the two of us to go somewhere, only to find out that she had invited some of our friends to come as well. I wasn't the only one who had noticed the change either. Our friends had all commented to me about how we seemed off and asked if anything was wrong. But again, anytime I tried to talk to her about any of it, she just blew me off with some lame-ass excuse. This has been going on for a while, and when she left her phone unlocked this morning while she was in the shower after one of the few nights she stayed over recently, I couldn't help myself. I snatched it up and started scanning through her private messages on her social media and texts. In less than a minute, I had my answer. She's been cheating on me with some guy she met on an online dating app. Judging by the messages, they've been hooking up for some time. Lucky for me, but unlucky for her, I think fast. I took screenshots of the dirtiest messages they had exchanged, and there are quite a few, and posted them on every account she has, and changed the passwords. She uses the same one for everything, so it wasn't difficult. Then I put her phone on silent and just waited. She rushed off to work without looking at her phone, so now I'm sitting here ready to enjoy the fallout. Update. When she finally checked her phone, it had blown up with texts, notifications, and missed calls. Every one of our friends and her family and coworkers had seen it all. She called me hysterical, begging for forgiveness, at which point she figured out I was the one who put them up. She begged I give her the password. I politely refused, then blocked her number. Since all of her friends had started off as my friends, she's now left completely humiliated and with absolutely no one. Next day, I sent her the password, but by then her fling was a legend. Edit. Password was, "I am a hoe." I'm sorry this happened to you, OP. You were obviously more into the relationship than she was. Still, she should have broken up with you after she found a new guy she was interested in. Relationships are not do or die, so she could have ended things with you before going further with her AP, but she decided not to end it probably because she wanted to have her cake and eat it too. Actions have consequences, and your ex is just getting hers. I hope this teaches her a lesson. It's never good to be a cheat. Story 2. First, a little background. We've been together for 22 years and married for the last 15. We have 2 children and have had the perfect marriage. We get along, rarely fight, and until 2 days ago, we had sex like newlyweds. The trouble started over 16 years ago, before we were married, but we were living together. And at that time had plans on a life together forever. She was required to travel for work a few times a year, which I didn't like. But I had no reason not to trust her and no right to tell a career-minded 26-year-old woman not to try and advance her career. In hindsight, I should have been concerned, considering a lot of her work friends were party girl types and probably had no problem cheating on their boyfriends. Even though I was always fearful that she would give in to temptation, I was never really worried about her cheating. Then, of course, she came home after a 4-day trip and started crying the second she saw me. I immediately knew what happened, and I feared the worst. She confessed to getting drunk and kissing someone. She told me a long story about how she met him and that all her friends were out flirting with guys that night. She was a wreck and had panic attacks all night, thinking I was going to leave her. I probed her for more information and she swore it was only a kiss, even though my gut told me there was more to the story. I was very close to leaving and never looking back, but I loved her and gave her the benefit of the doubt. She changed jobs that didn't require travel and stopped seeing those friends. Every day for years, it ate at me. She did more than just kiss, but she never admitted it. Over time, things got better, and we got married a year and a half later. For the entire duration of our marriage, she has never traveled without me and has only gone out without me a handful of times. Usually with a few girlfriends to dinner, and she almost always gets home by 10 p.m. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that she's never come close to doing anything since. She really had been the perfect wife and mother. We hadn't spoken about the kiss for years, even though it was always in the back of my mind. Then 2 days ago, we were talking about friends getting divorced because the wife was having a 2-year-long secret affair. I told her that I wouldn't be able to forgive that and reminded her how close I was to leaving her over a kiss before we were married. That is when she broke down and started crying and went into another panic attack. I immediately knew what was coming, and my heart broke and my life shattered. She confessed a lot more. It was more than just one kiss, but there was no actual intercourse. She admitted to a long makeout session and giving and receiving oral, but she drew the line at sex. I actually believe her on this point, but it doesn't really matter. We stayed up all night talking about this, and she wanted to hide it from me because she didn't want to hurt me and wanted to bear the burden on her own. So what do I do now? We have a house, kids, friends, and a life together. We are everything to each other. She has been a wreck, and I'm afraid her panic attacks will get more severe. Part of me wants to leave and never look back. Part of me wants to rationalize this as a mistake from 16 years ago when we weren't even married. I'm completely distraught, and I honestly don't know what life will be like tomorrow, next week, next year, or in another 16 years. She's my world, and I know she effed up and is more than remorseful, but I can't even look at her right now. What do I do? Help. Update. It's been about 2 months since D-Day. My situation may be a little different than most, as my wife confessed to a one-night stand that happened years ago before we were married. The recovery process has been just as difficult for me as the betrayal, and lies sting just as much of it were a recent event. But leaving, divorcing, and getting back at my wife would not be a proper way to handle anything, considering my wife of the past 15 years is a different person than when she cheated on me as my fiancé 16 years ago. Her guilt and remorse is obvious, and she's done everything right to make amends, both during the duration of our marriage and over the past 2 months. In fact, she's been more than perfect since D-Day, and I'm worried that she's grossly overcompensating. Our communication and openness has never been better, as we've both told each other a few deep, dark, non-infidelity secrets that we've hidden from each other. This has opened up our sex life in a way that we never enjoyed before. She has bent over backward for me in all aspects of our marriage, and our new sex life has been explosive as she's doing things she never did before, and that she had previously told me she had done some hard sexual limits that she didn't want to cross. Even though I feel closer to her than ever before and I'm greatly enjoying our new sexual activities, my concern is that she's trying to distract me from obsessing over her cheating or that she's overcompensating out of guilt and over time our sex life will go back to where it was a few months ago. Does anyone have any experience with this? OP, your wife cheated on you years ago while you two were in a relationship, and then she lied about what really happened for years. That's not a good thing, but then on the other hand, she's been remorseful and compensating for what she did back then, and that's not a good thing. I'm just worried you're both not processing this the right way. Using sex to cover up or make up for whatever problem you two have in your marriage right now isn't going to work for too long. You both need to go for marriage counseling and individual counseling. I would say fight for your marriage and her, but still after everything you feel like you can't let go of the past, then I think it'll be best for you to divorce her. Now for some comments. Talk to her. Getting past this is about learning how to actually talk to each other about hard and awkward and sometimes painful subjects, instead of playing mind games or doing what you think they want you to do, or hiding your thoughts until they blow up in a damaging action. So talk to her about it. While I'm sure there is some overcompensation involved, is it not also possible that having a great burden of guilt removed from her shoulders has helped her open up a bit more sexually? Guilt can be a terrible libido interest killer, and perhaps part of this is her bouncing back from no longer having to bear the shame and guilt alone. You might like to consider the possibility that she's using her sexual power as a highly effective manipulation tactic, and it appears to be working. I doubt that it's anything to do with guilt or distracting you from obsessing per se. In my experience, this kind of new and sustained sexual adventuring is fully intended to hook you in with the specific aim of assuring her own security and stability. Essentially, she's keeping your penis happy in the hope that by doing so, you won't file. The new bedroom adventures, and perhaps the frequency of sex in general, will probably change in direct correlation to her perception of the likelihood that you will divorce her. This is an insidious dynamic in the post-discovery phase. Beware, step back, pause, and observe.